All right, welcome back. I'm going to call this the Captain Obvious segment, right? Am I going to say that the coronavirus started with a lab leak in Wuhan? Well, I could, but that's a whole other show, right? Instead, I'm going to highlight what the Democrat-controlled Senate did yesterday. They overwhelmingly passed an amendment to the annual defense bill that would ban exports of our oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to China. Well, you don't say. Knocked me down with a feather. The real news is, though, that the vote was 85-14. Who in the world are the 14 that voted against this? That's what I want to know. A new report says it could take decades to fill this reserve. Now, we try to put in about 3 million barrels back in every month, and a lot of times we take some out, too. Now, assuming we never take any out, it will take us at least 7 years at that rate to refill it. If we take any out, it'll obviously take a lot longer. So decades is probably a good estimate. Now, my next guest is an American first kind of guy. Please welcome back to the show, Bob Iaccino. Bob, this could be an issue. I mean, look, with what's been happening geopolitically with both Russia and what's going on with China and Taiwan, I mean, do we want to really be short of oil now?
Yeah, this was my fear when they announced these huge sales when there wasn't actually a crisis. And that was really the key with the Biden 180 million barrel sales, is the low level we were already at historically. We were in the 600s. We'd been as high as the 700s in 2010. And then we dropped all the way down to where we're at now, which is somewhere in the 360 million barrel range. That is the lowest level since 1983. And the issue for me is when you look at the situation, yes, America is at a really high level of production. But when the SPR is this low, there's two problems. Number one, there's different kinds of crude oil. There's light, there's heavy, there's medium. We produce light in the U.S. So you have to actually exchange light for heavy in order to get all the different types of crude oil that you need. That's number one. So you can't really be energy independent. You can be sort of what we'd call synthetically energy independent, because if you drill for too much light, you can exchange it against countries like Mexico and Canada and somewhat Saudi Arabia that drill heavy. You can just make exchanges and you're independent. The second issue I have with it is if there is a real crisis, we are in deep, deep trouble. They're supposed to be refilling the SPR now. It actually reduced over the last couple of weeks again with some other quiet sales, some of which went to China. And if you're going to be in a situation where we're desperately low on what is supposed to be the emergency supply of American crude, at least keep the crude oil here to be used as domestically refined products, to be used by domestic users, in order to try and not keep us in a situation where demand starts outstripping supply. Saudi Arabia is already chumming up with China and India and other nations through their partnership with Russia, specifically to China. They're starting to explore ways of not using the dollar in oil transactions.
Yes.
This is scary for somebody like me who watches crude oil as long as we do. It's a very scary time. And it seems to me like they're kicking the can so far down the road as the can's going to fall off a cliff and disappear.
And it just feels like to me that the risk is that this starts to really spike and then all of a sudden we have another CPI problem.
You know, I have this. That's the easiest short-term problem to look at, is what it's going to do to consumer prices. The second part of it is that, and we talk about this all the time privately, and you and I have talked about it on the show. I've talked to your producer, Ashley, about it. You have to look at certain things and say, is this nefarious? Because it's just so stupid that these people can't be this stupid. If you push crude oil to the point where it's at crisis levels, then prices at the pump go so high that electric cars start to make sense. I mean, you're going to get there's potential for $9, $10 a gallon gasoline if there's a crisis. Here in the U.S., where we produce so much oil ourselves, and then one last thing I'd like to throw in. Last time we were producing this much oil, our rig count was about 36% higher than it's today. And the reason for that is shale oil rigs specifically produce the vast majority of their production in the early months and years of their lives. Right now, we have a lot of shale rigs in the Permian Basin and elsewhere producing vastly large amounts of oil. And when those dry up and slow to a crawl, we don't have the rigs to replace them.
All right, to bring it back to where I started, I mean, this country was built on cheap energy. I mean, that's how you become a rich country, right? because then you can have great schools, you can have great hospitals. That's what makes a rich country rich, is cheap energy. But now we've got an administration that is pushing all of our cheap energy to China, and we're having to purchase expensive energy that's inefficient from them. They must be sitting there thinking, I cannot believe they're actually doing this. They're building a coal plant a week over there, and they're exporting their wind and solar panels and windmills to us, thinking, what are they doing? What are we doing? You're right. It almost is like it's nefarious. I can't believe it.
And the rare earth metals sourced from Russia and other places sold through China.
Right.
So essentially, that's why you sit there and you say that they just simply can't be this stupid. There has to be some sort of backroom conversations going on that I'm not privy to. Otherwise, you literally have children running this situation. Yeah. Children who are just like mad and throwing blocks at each other, saying, no, I'm not going to buy it here. I want it cheaper. It's not going to get too much cheaper for any sustained period. And we're going to end up in a supply shortage, whether it's 6 months or a year from now. For those people who are going to hit me up on Twitter, right. Actually, it's probably a lot from this show. They're going to hit me up on Twitter saying we're producing more oil than ever. Just watch.
Yeah.
Just watch it happen.
Well, you know what? The only way this makes sense is you have to look at this issue through the lens of defund the police, because that was probably the beginning of the dumb era that we're in right now, of the stupid decisions that we're making that you just cannot believe that anybody with a third grader with a first grade education would think that's a dumb idea, but we did it anyway. All right. You can tell I'm angry about that one. Thank you very much, Bob. Have a great weekend. That was great. Jim Bob and the Cow Guy segment, Bob.